misguided wanderers. First there were many, and now so few. How little you must value your lives to take a single insignificant breath in my sanctum. I'm afraid there will be no quick death for you. No escape from this suffering. I shall draw out your ending as I see fit. For in dark places such as this, one must keep themselves entertained.
Evil is not an absence of good, it is not a choice. Evil is one of two forces in the cosmos, an agency locked in eternal struggle against its antithesis. Only good and evil exist, and not even a hair's width of space separates them. Quote, Vecna. That's right, guys. Today we're talking about the Lich, Vecna. And about that quote earlier, I don't actually agree with it, but I'm scared to get into an actual philosophical or theological or ideological debate with this guy because he could probably destroy me or worse. Vecna is a killer that I feel very conflicted about in Dead by Daylight. On the one hand, his presence in the realm of the entity feels almost comical. He's one of the most powerful wizards in D&D, with a mastery of the arcane so great he assaulted areas of the astral plane itself and warred with various gods, himself becoming a lesser deity. This guy doesn't just have a god complex, he is a minor god. He's one of the most feared forces in the world of Dungeons & Dragons, and I find it hard to believe that even the entity could possibly control him. But on the other hand, I love that he's here. Aside from Dracula and the Spirit, he's my favorite killer in the roster for just how powerful he is and the different badass lines he says. Oh, by the way, on the note of those badass lines, that's Matt Mercer doing his voice, by the way. That's perfect. That's actually perfect. So let's get into how our undead lord got here. We begin our lore after Vecna has ascended to his status as a Lich. Having shed his mortality and humanity in his quest for knowledge and power, he's formed his own great empire, which he presides over from his rotted tower. During his reign, he came across a page torn from some random tome written in a language he did not recognize. The page overflowed with a dark energy he'd never felt before, and it's fascinating to him. He spent months studying the writings, the syntax, the phonetics, and fighting to decipher the script. He ignored many of his other duties, all in his pursuit of knowledge upon this page. On occasion, he would receive word of disappearances in his empire that he would be forced to investigate, but when he did, he discovered that there were no bodies, no signs of a struggle, and the area was covered in this dark energy, that same one from the page, in fact. It infuriated him. What was the connection? What do these things have in common? The one who wrote that script must also be behind these deaths, right? But then something struck him about that. What if they weren't deaths, just disappearances? Within the writing of the tome, one of the words he translated as death could also mean disappear, and if he considered that, then perhaps... So Vecna set to work, and finally he translated the passage and read it out loud. However, the moment he did, he summoned forth a force far greater than he'd ever expected. Black fog swarmed around him. Tendrils reached out to draw him into the forgotten realm beyond his own. See what I did there, D&D nerds? Forgotten realm beyond his own? D&D beyond? I'll stop. Vecna resisted. He fought back using his own power to ward off the entity. But then, he felt it. Within the realm of the entity, there was a source of power. The same power that he'd witnessed on the page. The same power that he'd witnessed in the disappearances. It was there, waiting for him. So he stopped resisting. He wanted this power, and he needed knowledge in order to obtain it. He would submit to the entity for now, but he would be learning, growing, and in time he would take the entity's power for himself because he wasn't worried about time. He had all the time in the world. So, I actually really like this lore. There's a lot of discussion to be had around this, and it makes sense that Vecna would be drawn to the mystery and power of the entity, and even allow himself to submit to it, so long as he has the chance to study its power. But there are a few major questions we have to ask, like, for example, in the lore surrounding the bards, the troop that we talked about, supposedly evil was being eradicated from the world. Was it because Vecna was taken out of that world? Was it because the entity sucked away Vecna into his realm? That doesn't make any sense. Vecna was not the only source of evil in Dungeons & Dragons. Is the rationale that the entity set it up as a trap? He started removing evil to draw in people who would become curious? That's awfully lucky. Was it because Vecna was doing it himself? Maybe he left behind, like, okay, if I'm gone, make everything peaceful again? That makes no sense for him to do. So this doesn't tie very well into the lore for the next one, unless we assume that Vecna's absence led to the destruction of evil. But, again, by that logic, remember what Vecna just said, evil is not the absence, evil is not the absence of good. By that logic, the two constantly exist. Even without him, there should still be evil. So this makes literally no sense. This actually makes no sense whatsoever in the world of Dungeons & Dragons. So that doesn't add up. But another major question everyone has asked is, would Vecna succeed in his struggle with the entity? Could Vecna actually overpower the entity in Dead by Daylight? Well, D&D fans would definitely say yes. Dead by Daylight fans might say no, but here's my take. I think that both Vecna and the entity have a history of outfoxing and outplaying very powerful forces, but Vecna has a longer list of losses due to his own arrogance. After all, he failed twice to ascend to true godhood, and though strong enough to assault the city of Sigil, he was still thwarted by the Lady of Pain. If we consider the entity on the level of a greater deity, then it makes sense that Vecna might be inferior in power to the eldritch abomination that is the entity. But with that said, it isn't so cut and dry. You'll notice on the back of Vecna's neck that there's a little glyph that looks like one of the entity's markings. Many speculate that this is a ward that the entity placed on Vecna to restrict his powers. Perhaps he did this just to make trials for Vecna harder, since if he had access to all his spells, no survivor would ever escape him, because Vecna has the power to rewrite reality itself. Maybe the entity put it there to lock Vecna in his realm. After all, Vecna can travel the multiverse and appears where and when he likes. Maybe it's to make sure that he doesn't ever decide, I'm bored of this, and leave the entity's realm. But others think it's because the entity fears Vecna. Sure, he might not be strong enough to oppose him yet, but Vecna is nothing if not resourceful and intuitive. He will learn, and the longer he remains in this realm, he'll learn, grow, and there's a chance that he'll discover a weakness or secret of the entity that it doesn't want him to know. Vecna believes that all beings in existence have one dark secret, one private truth that, once you learn it, you can use to manipulate them. And if that's true, then the entity is terrified Vecna will find his own secret. And that is something he simply can't allow. Maybe the entity is thinking, I made a grave mistake trying to trap Vecna in my realm, and now I need to put a leash on him, and I need to constantly check that leash. While we can't be 100% sure, what I will say is that Vecna is now a nightmare in the entity's realm, and I kid you not, he's so powerful that many survivors will just give up early and ask me to kill them just so that they can get their pain over with. Why? Well, let's discuss what makes Vecna so powerful. Vecna's power is Vile Darkness, named after the dark book he keeps in his chest. Now here's how Vecna works. Vecna can use 4 spells in the match, each one with a different effect and each with an independent cooldown. First is Flight. When you have the spell selected, press the ability button and hold it. Vecna will then rise into the air and fly forward for 4 seconds. Vecna can fly over pallets and windows, but not over in-world obstacles. Vecna also cannot attack while he's in flight. Second is Flight of the Damned. When this spell is selected, press the ability button and hold it to aim your attack. When released, a small squad of spectral skeletons will appear in a line in front of you and fly forward, spreading out as they go. If a survivor is hit by one of these skeletons, they will take damage. The skeletons can pass through walls and obstacles, but they can be avoided normally by ducking, as the skeletons hover a little above the ground. That's why it's important to use this carefully when your target is attempting to bait or jump a pallet or window, making it harder for them to avoid you. Third is Dispelling Circle. When this spell is selected, press and hold the ability button to aim, and then release a giant magical sphere that flies in a straight line. Any survivor within the sphere will give off Killer's Instinct, and any magical item they are carrying will be rendered useless for 60 seconds. Finally, the last spell is Mage Hand. When this spell is selected, press this button while aiming at a pallet and activate the spell. If the pallet is not dropped, the hand will appear and lock the pallet in place, preventing the survivor from dropping it. If the pallet is already dropped, the hand will lift the pallet back up again and hold it in place briefly. This spell is highly useful in chase, but it needs to be timed carefully and is not recommended in loop situations unless you have mastered the timing. But that's not all. Scattered throughout the trial are magic chests. When a survivor opens one, they roll a d20. If the result is a low number, the item will be a normal item that is either depleted or half depleted. If they roll a nat 1, the treasure chest will reveal itself to be a mimic and bite the survivor, injuring them and giving away Killer's Instinct. However, if the survivor rolls a higher number, they will receive a set of gauntlets or boots, which will reveal the aura of the entity when he uses a corresponding spell. You can wear one set of gauntlets and one set of boots at once, meaning you can see the aura of the Lich for up to 2 of his spells. But if you're really lucky and roll a nat 20, you'll either receive the Hand of Vecna or the Eye of Vecna. Carrying the Hand of Vecna allows a healthy survivor to rush into a locker and then teleport to another locker in the environment randomly, but it will cost them a health state to do so. It's a great way to get away from danger and evade Vecna. Meanwhile, the Eye of Vecna, if healthy, can allow you to rush out of a locker and obtain complete invisibility, have their blood, scratch marks, and grunts of pain suppressed, and gain a 25% haste effect for 12 seconds. However, once the 12 seconds are up, they give off Killer's Instinct for 3 seconds. Be warned, though, survivors carrying one of these items can be moried by Vecna if they are on death hook. So it's kind of a catch-all and catch-22 kind of thing. Now, my thoughts on Vecna's powers? He's got to be one of the most versatile killers in the game. Right up there with Dracula, giving him a lot of options in how he chases survivors, a lot of ways to counter different survivor plays. His Mage Hand is a great way to stop pallet loops. His flight allows him to clear a lot of territory quickly. In fact, I rarely use it to clear pallets or vault locations. I usually use it just to catch up to survivors because it does make you move it crazy fast. And if you can master the timing and use of his Flight of the Damned, it's an incredibly useful ranged spell. So I really, really do like his abilities. But now moving on to his perks. Vecna comes with 3 unique perks: Dark Arrogance, Languid Touch, and Weave Attunement. One of these I find to be piss. The other 2 are pretty good. Dark Arrogance. Despite me loving Vecna, this perk is dog shit. I mean, by itself, I will add this, by itself, it's useless. Get this. You vault windows 25% faster. Sounds nice. But in exchange, you are blinded and stunned 25% longer. Okay, now you might think, okay, well, I mean, that seems like a fair trade. You can vault faster, but you're blinded longer. What's wrong with that? Well, yeah, it sounds okay. Until you remember that Bamboozle exists, a perk that is infinitely better as it gives you a 15% increase to vault speed and blocks the window you jump over temporarily. No negative. There is no negative effect. Yes, I know. You could combine Dark Arrogance with Bamboozle and make your vaults even faster and make them even better. Okay, but if you're going to do that, just go a full vault speed build with Dark Arrogance, Bamboozle, Fire Up, and Superior Anatomy. That will make you vault windows incredibly fast. You will be flying over those windows. Yeah, do that. But you've now taken up all your perk slots just for a vault speed build. Why would you do this? It will only help you in certain instances. It provides no gen defense, no aura reading, nothing that would help you hunt down or track survivors. If the survivors you're playing against are really good at stealth, you're screwed. And now you might say, okay, well, don't do the full build. Just do Bamboozle and Dark Arrogance. That way you have 2 perk slots open. Yeah, 2 perk slots open. When you could have 3. You know, that's my problem here. Dark Arrogance is so useless by itself. It has to be used with another perk. It really does. Nothing wrong with a vaulting build. You can totally do it. But other than that, Dark Arrogance is not a good perk to use on its own. Especially if you're a newer or casual player who gets blinded or stunned frequently. It's just not worth it. Yeah. I wouldn't bother with Dark Arrogance on its own. Unless you're just really aiming to do that vaulting build that I talked about, this is not a good one to use.
If the killer is proxy camping, so can escape. So they can focus on generators.
Next is Languid Touch. Now, this perk is honestly decent, and if combined with Spies from the Dark, it's even better. When a survivor scares a crow within 36 meters of you, they suffer the exhausted status effect for 10 seconds, and then this perk goes on cooldown for 5 seconds. This is highly useful as crows are often frightened in the chase, or when a survivor is trying to run away earlier from you, and if they're exhausted, it limits their counters to you while you try to gain ground. Plus, if you combine it with Spies from the Shadows, this is an excellent perk combination. Spies from the Shadows causes all crows that are disturbed to caw and reveal their auras to you, letting you know where a survivor is at any given time. Now, here's why that's even better. Get this. If the survivors have no idea you have this perk, they won't be notified if a crow caws and alerts you. I mean, of course, they know a crow is disturbed, but they don't know that you have Spies in the Shadows. So it's a great way to track survivors, gain on them, and they can't use their exhaustible perks to get away from you. Great combination. And finally, Weave Attunement. Now, this perk is incredibly good. When a survivor item is fully depleted for the first time, it will automatically drop. Anytime a survivor's item is dropped, its aura is marked in white, and any survivor within 8 meters of the object will have their aura revealed. If a survivor picks up an item from the ground, they suffer the Oblivious status effect for 30 seconds. Combine this perk with Franklin's Demise to make sure that the survivors keep dropping their items, and you can make sure these guys have nowhere to hide. And if they want to counter you by picking up useless items, they'll suffer for it. And the only real counter to this power is to either not use any items at all, or to move all useless items to one corner of the map so that they won't have any aura traps all over the map at once. But doing this is time consuming and requires coordination.
Decisions.
Honestly, I really like Vecna. I think he's an excellent addition to the game. His design is cool. His powers are incredibly versatile and, in my opinion, maybe a little OP. I can't think of many matches where I've actually lost with Vecna. Even when I start off bad, like I did a match earlier where I started off really bad, like the survivors had gotten all generators but one done, and I still had no kills. But suddenly I just turned it around because Vecna is that strong. He's just that good. He plays so strong. You need a really well-coordinated team of survivors to have a chance against Vecna, and that's why I like him. He is just really, really fun to play and really fun to use. So, gotta love Vecna. But we are now done with Dungeons & Dragons, and we are moving on to the next chapter. But before we go to that chapter, there is a survivor we need to talk about. A survivor from a totally different gaming franchise that I am very excited to talk about because it's a game that I actually really enjoy. So, tune in next time as we delve into forgotten tombs and scary places as we play as Lara Croft. That's right, guys. We're looking at Lara Croft next time. Very much looking forward to it, and I will see you in my next video. Take care.